Hey y'all, Kurt Sasso here from TGT Webcomics at Kids Read Comics. We're here with an amazing guy, one of the one-third of the art and story creative process crew. Since you just got Kevin as well, we got to him. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm energized but tired at the same time. Does that make sense? That's what happens at these things.
Oh, totally makes sense. Jerzy, you've been a fan favorite in the art and story. You've been a huge influence in the webcomic community. You know, I've enjoyed your work and your style. And no, I'm not flattering you just because you're here. It's a genuine aspect. But, how did you get involved with Kids Read Comics here?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for pointing out how good I sound on paper. But secondly, okay, Kids Read Comics. How did that start? Well, it was a confluence of I think something that's in the air right now. I think a lot of cartoonists are getting fed up with the big commercial shows, and how it's more about film, it's more about the action figure tie-in, the serial tie-in and whatever. And it's not about the creators as much anymore, the cartoonists and the comics creators as much. It's not about the comics as much anymore. And so it just so happened that I was shopping around this idea to some local libraries, saying, like, we should have a little festival, like an art fair, because I would go to these art fairs with the other art story guys, and we would make more at a tiny little art fair with 1,000 people coming through than we would make at a Wizard World Chicago, where I don't know how many untold thousands of people are coming through there. So we thought, well, we should have a little comics art fair in one of our local towns, and I happened to do a workshop at the Chelsea District Library where Edith Burney, one of the co-organizers of the show, is the teen librarian. And I threw this idea at her. I was like, I have this dream of this comics festival. And she's like, me too. I've been thinking about this for years. And so we started putting our heads together. I happened to meet Dan Mishkin, one of the other co-organizers, at Heroes Con a couple years before. And so I pitched this idea around at him just to kind of get his thoughts on it. He's like, I want to be a part of this. And then we brought Dan Merritt in as the comic shop proprietor of Green Brain Comics, the best comic book store in Michigan, hands down. And we all come at it from our own vantage point, right? Edith is the librarian who understands library infrastructure and how to assemble volunteers and do programming in the library. I am a teaching artist, and I have been for several years now, and I know how to lead classes and how to develop content that is good for kids and how to teach comics to kids. Dan Mishkin is well rooted in the industry. He has many friends that he can lean on to get our celebrity guests to come to this thing. And as with Dan Merritt, where Dan Merritt he's an individual, owns his own comic book store. He knows how to run a business, and he also knows how to get community. There's one thing about Green Brain that was worth knowing is it's how plugged into their community they are, and how they work with the community for all sorts of different good causes. So there's this. He brings with him basically the entire city of Dearborn supporting him, including the mayor. So yeah. It was a weird thing where it was just sort of like a bunch of girls just talking in a room together. You know what I really like is I like this. Yeah, me too. And then suddenly a year later, 2 years later, we've got a convention on our hands. Or actually, we're going to call it a festival next year. We're actually going to ditch the name convention because that word is too loaded nowadays. It makes you think of the show where you can get an autograph from Carrie Fisher, right, or Eric Estrada. So.
Well, as I said, you've said yourself you're a talented person, and I can attest to that. But obviously being a teacher, it's very hard to educate the younger audiences unless you really have fun doing what you're doing. You must be able to do really well if you're teaching for a number of years too.
Well, yeah, there's different kinds of teaching, and there's the old style where they say, I'm the teacher, you're the student, you sit down, shut up, and listen. And that's the teacher's going to say to the students, wait till I'm done with my point here, and then we can have fun, and then we can do the fun activity, but first you have to listen to me for 20 minutes. And a good teacher is going to be able to, I think a good teacher is like a good entertainer. You gauge your audience, you figure out where their interests lie, and if you have an obstreperous kid kind of popping up and making noise, you work them into the act somehow. I had this experience in Detroit where I had I was teaching in Detroit for a year with Art Serve Michigan, and I had these 3 12-year-old boys. It was right after lunch. They were very excitable. They wanted to show off, and I was trying to teach something about panel size to the kids, and I thought, well, you know what, these kids, I can't seem to get them to calm down, so I'm going to bring them in front of the class. And I said, okay, you guys we're going to construct a scene as a group. And I was like, you guys are going to act out the scene, and when you guys, the rest of the class, when you guys see a moment that would make a good panel, when you're capturing that essential moment in comic storytelling, you yell freeze, and then you guys have to freeze. And we did that for a few panels, and then while they froze, the kids drew the panels. So the kids who wanted to learn the lesson, they got to do it. But the kids who wanted to show off, they also learned because they were participating in the learning experience. And I think that's the difference between like a teacher who's paying attention and knows how to improvise and work with a group, and the teacher who just stands there and says, I am the fount of knowledge, and I will pour it into your head, and you will be much smarter for being here. So I think that's the real trick. It's not necessarily, I really do believe that you don't have to have a deep knowledge of comics to teach comics. You just have to have a deep curiosity and a willingness to improvise and think on the fly and respond to what you're hearing from the students, because they know the stuff, but you have to be the guide who points out what they know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, clear as mud. No, I'm just kidding. No, really, it does make absolute sense there. But those that want to draw, you have the passion, you have the understanding. They look at your work, and what do they say to you? Not as a teacher though, as an artist. What do kids looking at your work give you?
Yeah, well, that's something that I feel really strongly about as well. Is as long as I can remember in my work as a professional, I've always wanted to make stuff that would make young kids happy. My audience, the audience I write for, is myself as an 8-year-old, and what I thought was cool then. And so nothing makes me feel better than when an 8 to 10-year-old boy comes up to my table, takes the book, and sits down and reads the whole thing. And in some cases, the parent's like, let's go, and the kid's like, I'm not done yet. And this one little boy one time, he sat down and read the whole thing for free, and it's always a bummer when somebody reads your whole book for free, but he puts it on the table and he says breathlessly, that was awesome. That's the moments that I live for. So it's about it's getting a young mind excited about imagining and thinking about adventure and character. All the stuff, I mean, if you've listened to the Art and Story podcast, you've no doubt heard me talk about the cartoons of my youth, 80s cartoons, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Silverhawks, etc. That stuff was electrifying because of the bold, vibrant characters, the elegance of the storytelling. It wasn't simplistic, it was simple. There's a difference, right? And so they would get their points across hard and fast, and then they would have to have everything do double duty, where a character can't just say, let's go over there. They'd have to say, let's go over there in a way that only they could say it. And so you get a sense of their character and you get a sense of the plot, all with this very limited time frame and this really elegant and this short dialogue, because you don't have much, you have 21 minutes to do a story, right? So, yeah.
Well, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Jerzy. You're an amazing, energetic guy. I love that. I really do. What's the website that we can go to see your work and everything like that?
Everything that I do is on jdrozd.com, DROZD. So, I have links to the Art and Story podcast, Sugary Cereals, Kids Read Comics, and the upcoming Up Fair that we're doing this fall in Lexington, Kentucky, which is going to be like this, but more aimed at the actual artists, where it's going to have comics workshops, but professional development workshops for cartoonists. So people who are really serious about learning more about independent publishing and comics publishing and making comics and stories should probably check that out too. That's on my website. So Lexington, Kentucky, the way to go and the place to be for the upcoming Up Fair. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview, Jerzy. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah, thanks.